Okay, good evening, everybody. Hope everyone's okay. Hope everyone's well. Hope everyone can hear me. And yeah, just let us know in the chat whether or not you can or can't. But I will crack on. So, what we're going to talk about tonight, obviously, we're going to go through price action. We've had a little bit of a move up over the last couple of days, which will be obviously interesting to talk about and see which legs that can go. But I actually was, trawling through crypto Twitter a few days ago, and this same story kept on coming up over and over again about a potential issue that could be worse than FTX. And so we used to do this quite a bit where we'd find one news article and we'd spend 10-15 minutes kind of digging into it. And I think this is actually probably worthwhile going into. And I'm going to be talking about World Liberty Financial. And sort of what's happened there over the last 2 or 3 weeks, I suppose. So we'll dive into that. We'll then have a look at Bitcoin. We'll have a look at, big picture, little picture. We'll have a look at BitTensor and some other tokens on the way. Try and make this all nicely rounded up inside an hour or so. So let's just jump straight. Oh, I should say, I didn't get any questions, but if you've got any questions or if you have any comments, thoughts on what I'm about to talk about, please feel free to drop them in the chat and we'll try and have a discussion about it. So, first of all, let's have a look at price 3-day time frame Bitcoin looked in there. So we had been held underneath that 72,000 level. We kept on rejecting from it. We had that nice clear rejection last week, and then it came back down to pretty much this trend line, which we've had on there for a while. And then we've had this strong move up. Oh, and just to emphasize how strong the move has been, I think not on this chart, maybe on this chart, we have today actually set a new high since, well, the highest Bitcoin has been since the end of January. So in this range that we've been in, 76,061 or whatever we got to earlier on this afternoon, was the highest we have done. It was previously 75,988 on the exchanges I use. So yeah, today we have seen that breached. We are seeing a little bit of a pullback at the moment, but just looking at the 3-day candles at the moment, kind of thinking that could actually make a fairly good move towards the northern trend barrier here, if you will, trend line, or maybe in and around that 78,300, 78,400 kind of level. And I think actually what you could do, I haven't moved it until now, but we move this here. We try and line this up a little bit better. I know it's wicks and bodies, I know, which is why it was the way it originally was. But if we had a look at it here, you can actually see that within this range, we've come all the way back down. We wicked up, down, and now that we are pretty much 2/3 of the way, actually by the top of this wick, about 3/4 of the way, it kind of feels that that's not out of the question. That feels like more of a possibility to me than it turning around here and coming back down. We will explore that a little bit later on, but just from that big picture, now that we have, clearly bounced off that bottom trend line, broken through that 72 level, even cleared the high that we made in the middle of March, that level towards 78,000, we covered it on Friday so much, 78, 79,000, so much confluence in and around that level. That move kind of feels that that's probably where we're going to go. Obviously, no guarantees on that, so we're going to have a look at price actions either side and see where that determines. But yeah, that's something for us to have a look at and explore a little bit later on. I have actually kept the Bitcoin dominance chart for a reason this time, and that's because we're now hitting that 60% level, and that's an interesting one for us because we've ranged here for the last 6 months. We have come up to 60% before, but we then have seen those retracements back down. And as I mentioned on Friday, it's not actually the start of a potential alt season. What we've actually seen over the last 3 months is the collapse of Bitcoin dominance has been a move from Bitcoin to stable coins. Now, that doesn't mean it's going to guarantee to happen again, but I think given that we're at this 60% level, we have seen that we reject from this. So we may start to see a bit of a cooling off. And given where we are in the cycles, given how everything else looks, I would suggest that the argument would be if the rejection at 60 does occur again, that transfer into stable coins, USDC, USDT, is more likely then was actually seeing a mini altcoin rally. Stand by for me to be proved wrong, but that's a nice way to be proved wrong. I accept. So all eyes, or maybe not all eyes, but at least some eyes on the Bitcoin dominance chart at the moment. And again, total 2, not really looking that special. And we have said previously that these two have effectively just mirrored Bitcoin and also total 2, just sort of emphasizing actually what we're really seeing is whatever happens with Bitcoin is going to replicate through the market. But the key difference from this green candle today is I just told you that Bitcoin had actually cleared its high for this range. Well, if that was the case, we would have expected total 2 to have cleared the 1 trillion mark and actually should be somewhere in and around 1.05 to 1.06, clearing its mid-range from March. So we're not really seeing the same kind of movement that we have seen previously. Still, for me, kind of just saying that I'm not too interested in altcoins. I think I've been clear on that for a while, but I don't think there's really that much of an expansion from it, outside of a few outliers, of course. And then we move on to BitTensor, and BitTensor has been the outlier. It went up when Bitcoin went down, and unfortunately it's been going down as Bitcoin has gone back up, and it's actually at a pretty crucial point at the moment in terms of what's going to go on here. 3-day time frame, not the easiest to see some of this on, but some of these previous trend lines that we've kind of had, okay, we didn't quite make it to the yellow line, but this white trend line, which has kind of worked all the way back to, what's this, April 25, seen tops and bottom support and resistance. We kind of have rejected quite cleanly from that. Double top into this, as I say, 3 days not so great. We've broken down through from a double top point of view. We've lost that 260 level we were talking about. I think there's some other signals in there, but we're kind of at the last bastion of hope at 240. And as I say, we lose that 200 level and sub 200 level just has to be talked about. So of course we will explore where those go as well. Okay, let's just quickly then cover World Liberty Financial. It is, as I said, a little bit complicated, and I did ask in the poll whether or not people think Donald Trump is a crypto hero or a crypto villain. Now, what I'm going to talk about now, there's actually, not that I need to, ensure that, everything that I say is allegedly or anything like that, because not that many people watch this, but there is actually no evidence in what we're going to talk about that anything that can actually be linked back to Donald Trump, and Donald Trump is actually doing any of this. But he was announced as effectively the face of World Liberty Financial when it was announced. And I should have got a photo, but for those of you around in the crypto space, I'm talking July 2024, the Bitcoin conference at Nashville. This is pre-Trump's election. Trump came on stage, massive fanfare and fan about Bitcoin, about Web3, just about the power that crypto can have and will have, would he be elected in his office. And so, he was not only someone that was backing crypto, he then went on to launch, products, companies like World Liberty Financial, and meme coins, as some of you in the chat sort of mentioned, to sort of really stake that I am here for crypto. And yes, there are things in the background, the Genesis Act and the stablecoin stuff and all that. And I think, the Crypto Act, some of this stuff is pretty close to being pulled together. But I want to focus on today just on World Liberty Financial. So for those of you that don't really know what it is, except for the fact that it was put together by the Trump family and others, and we'll go through that in a little bit. It's a DeFi protocol which effectively was badged as bridging the gap between traditional financiers and sort of the new age digital financiers. So that bridge between Web 2 investors and ultimately Web 3 investors. There's two elements or tokens that we're going to ultimately talk about within this. So there is WLFI, which is the DeFi protocol token, which I think a lot of people talk about, but actually the main point of this is a stable coin. Sorry, I should have gone into this one. So this is World Liberty Financial, which, as I say, is a governance protocol token, as you will. And then they have the stablecoin token that goes with it, World Liberty Financial USD, or the ticker is USD1. And obviously this is a stable coin. So what am I actually talking about and what's going on here? Well, people are starting to as they do, data scrape through blockchain information. I was going to say data again, but and they've come across a very peculiar set of things, which maybe does not paint World Liberty Financial in the best picture. So we're going to run through kind of what that is, and then I'll give you the wider branch from it all. So obviously, World Liberty Finance launched. I actually can't remember. I think it was about March of 2025. Forgive me there. But prior to that, it had an ICO or a couple of ICO rounds. I think it raised about $500 million. This thing is not a small flash in the pan. And with every ICO, you get a white paper. But of course, it being Donald Trump, can't be a white paper. It's going to be a gold paper. And like every single white paper out there, nobody bothered to read it. And neither did I. I was not interested in World Liberty Financial in any iota, but over the past few days, I have now given this paper a little peruse, and there's some pretty interesting things within this, namely, and probably most importantly, because history is trying to correct this at the moment, but let me just scroll down here. The supporting teams, inspired by the visions of Donald J. Trump, the team supporting the WLF, committed to reshape the financial landscape, includes Donald Trump, down as a co-founder, Eric Trump, Donald Trump Jr., Barron Trump. We've got Chase Hero, which we'll come back to him a little bit later. Sorry, not Chase, we won't come back to him. Steve Witkoff, which we will come back to him in a little bit. And Corey Kaplan, the Chief Technical or Technology Officer, should I say. We'll also come back to him. Obviously, there's some other people within there. So fine, you just announced the team like you'd have on everything else. And at the time, we kind of knew the Trump family would be involved in this. And yeah, we're going to have other people that are involved in it as well. But what is actually quite interesting is since the 9th of April, good old Donald Trump Jr. has been going back through Twitter and some of the websites here and has pretty much softened or changed the titles of the Trump family. They're now just advisors or endorsers or digital influencers or stuff like that. They're no longer co-founders or co-directors, but this was how it was originally badged, and obviously with the incumbent president of the United States as part of the co-founding team, that was part of the appeal, if you will. Now, the other interesting part within here, and we're not going to necessarily read through this, don't worry about it too much, but there is a little caveat in here which talks about this company, DT Marks DeFi LLC, and that is interesting for two reasons. One, because actually World Liberty Financial agrees that the DT Marks DeFi LLC receives 22.5 billion WLF token and the right to receive 75% of the net protocol revenues as defined in the services, with the other 25% going to Steve Witkoff and other family members, etc. So, okay, interesting that a company which is associated with the Trump family, DT, kind of gives it away, is getting 75% of all of the net protocol revenues, but also 22.5 billion tokens associated with it. So far, though, nothing really is amiss. But what we then suddenly start to find, apologies if I'm jumping around a little bit, I did try to, it's quite complicated. There is like a PowerPoint presentation. I just got my bot to kind of put some stuff together on. So I'm not reading from it yet, but I may have to jump back to it if I start to lose my place. And there is a point to all of this, as interesting or not interesting as it may be. But the point being that actually, at the beginning of April, just around about the time of the ceasefire agreed in Iran, World Liberty Financial used 5 billion of its own token to borrow 75 million from a platform, which it then sent 40 million. So it took 5 billion of its token. It then borrowed 75 million on a lending platform, which we'll go through in a moment. And then of that 75 million, it sent 40 million of that to Coinbase Prime, which it was then, that's basically an institutional level fiat gateway, which then turned that $40 million into fiat and was sent away. Now, again, that in itself starting to be a little bit confusing and a little bit, I don't know, pricking that sort of sense in the back of your head of, this doesn't sound too good, but it actually unfortunately gets a little bit worse than that, because when you actually dive into the detail of some of this, you just realize what has actually gone on. Now, I don't know if it's... So the point of the WLFI token is it's a governance token. So you can buy it, but there's very few places in which you can actually transfer it to, sell it to. Effectively, you're buying, you're holding on to it. And then there's lockup periods and everything else. So, you know, it's almost in itself a little bit of a stable coin because there's not too much buy or sell pressure. And as a matter of fact, the only thing that can really be done with it is it can be used as collateral on certain lending platforms, should that lending platform deem that to be acceptable. One of those platforms in question is one called Dolomite. Dolomite DeFi lending platform. I'd never heard of it before, and I'm not sure if any of you have, because funnily enough, this thing's fairly new as well. It came and was created around about the same time as World Liberty Financial, and you can even say Dolomite chosen to provide the World Liberty markets. Now, who is the founder of Dolomite, you may ask? Well, after that, we have to go back to here, because the person who owns Dolomite is none other than Corey Kaplan, the Chief Technology Officer, who sits on the supporting team, the board, whatever you will, of World Liberty Financial. So, you know, already maybe a potential conflict of interest there. And as I said, Dolomite get to choose whether or not they want to. But one of the main platforms that will accept this token, which apparently can't be sold anywhere, is Dolomite. Any guesses for which lending protocol platform that 5 billion WLFI tokens were sent to? That's right. It was sent to Dolomite's platform. But it actually gets even worse than that, because, again, without trying to bore people, these sort of lending platforms, you know, where you sort of collateralize one asset to lend against another, they require liquidity pools, lending pools, etc. Well, that 5 billion tokens actually utilized 100% of that platform, which then meant that all these other 85,000 people that were on Dolomite's platform that also had WLFI can no longer use their own WFI for the purpose of a collateral to borrow money against, because, as I said, those $5 billion provided by the Trump family, allegedly, obviously, have taken up 100% utilization of that. So now everybody else is just holding this absolutely worthless coin. And you can imagine when the news of what we're reading through right now come through, the price dropped 20-30% overnight from it. But it does kind of get a little bit worse than that, unfortunately. And this is where I might have to go back to my PowerPoint presentation just so I can get the notes from it. But ultimately, I will have to. Just bear with me a second. Just trying to find the dates. That was it. It's the 9th. So this all started to come about on the 7th. The transactions were made. On the 8th, we started to see the lending protocol take place. And then that move from Dolomite to Coinbase Prime, and that change of 75 million USDT, they took 40 million of that and turned it into fiat currency. And that fiat currency was sent to none other than Steve Witkoff. Now, Steve Witkoff gets $40 million sent to him. Okay, fair enough. Doesn't seem much, but does anyone actually know who Steve Witkoff is? Has anyone heard his name recently? Because you're not going to believe it. It's the very same. It is the US Special Envoy, Steve Witkoff, who was doing the negotiations between the United States and Iran. So, I mean, it's all starting to smell a little bit fishy, of course it is. But to be absolutely clear, none of this is illegal. This is an exploitation of gray areas that unfortunately exist within cryptocurrency. They have existed within cryptocurrency, and I dare say, until stringent regulation is brought in, will continue to do that. So the point I suppose I'm trying to make from all of this, and we could keep on going through this, but for the, you know, I was going to say brevity, but I've already wasted 15 minutes. But for the point of where we're trying to get to with this, we can leave that there. An organization backed and set up by the Trump basically took an illiquid token, of which they had a shit ton supply of, sent it to a DeFi lending platform, which was created by one of the co-founders of the original company, was able to lend against it, stopping all other customers from lending against it. They then took as much as they could, sent it to Coinbase Prime, turned it into fiat currency, and sent it to the guy who was negotiating the peace deal or the ceasefire with Iran one day before the ceasefire was announced. That could be a coincidence, but that is what has happened. Now, the shadiness of it all is unfortunately just to go and show that we as retailers are but mere pond scum. Okay, there is nothing we can do, and this goes in traditional markets as well. There is no waves that we can make. We are just lucky to survive within this pool of water that we are operating in. We have potentially the leader of the free world, or certainly the company set up and promoted by the leader of the free world in inverted commas, just blatantly and brazenly just deciding that it was going to screw over all those people, that it was going to send this money and just cash a worthless token into $75 million worth of cryptocurrency stablecoins. And with not a care in the world, because they know that it is legal. And I think, I probably shitted on altcoins quite a bit recently, but this is just for me a reminder of the waters that we're treading in, the landmines that we potentially can step on just by sheer accident of not knowing what the bigger picture is. And as I said, to be clear, this is not illegal. Nothing that we've just talked about there is going to see anyone go to prison. That's why it's nothing like what FTX is. It's nothing like what FTX is. FTX actually was illegal. And worse than that, the FTT token had some utility at the time. And so the using of that really caused the market to drop off. I don't think this is going to have a massive implication on the market, not unless we see further evidence of much stronger undertakings than this. But the point of the matter is that they can just get away with it, and they're happy to do it. And I think we just got to be careful. And so for me, not even Bitcoin is safe from this kind of movements. However, if we are going to operate within this sector, we are going to try and profit from this sector, the safest, maybe not the most bang for your buck, but certainly the safest way to operate is to stick to the big asset, the king, Bitcoin, in which it takes a much greater force than the president of the United States to actually implicate what you're doing. But for those that were holding the WLFI token, they're absolutely screwed. And I don't know what the long-term ramifications for that will be, but ultimately it's a damaging impact on the trust of the token as well. And I think when people can leave it, we are going to see it leave it. And if you're the last person to react to it, or you aren't so paying attention to crypto right now, you may be on a bag of absolute doo-doo by the end. So is he a villain? Well, not by the letter of the law. He's certainly not a criminal, but it's certainly not the actions you expect of your main character hero. So I think there is definitely a line to be worn on that. And I was trying to find. I saw it today, and I started looking through Twitter, and I was running out a bit of time to try and re-find it again. But all the times that someone has placed these mysterious bets on Polymarket right prior to major news being announced by the United States government, and this is impacting both traditional markets and crypto markets. But it just goes to show you that there are people within the inner circles of the US government at the moment that are utilizing this gray area of legality to be able to place bets on Polymarket that peace deals are going to happen. I saw one recently that was launched yesterday, I think it was, saying that there was going to be a peace deal either on the 15th or the 22nd of April. This was the same person that 24 hours prior to the ceasefire being announced on the 9th of April did exactly the same again. And so people are starting to listen. So they're the waters that unfortunately we have to step in. It is going to take a leg off you at some stage. It's just whether or not, to follow the analogy, you have a tourniquet to survive it and live for the next round there. I'd say just be careful. I'll kind of keep an eye on sort of any other things that jump out from this, but I just urge people to just be conscious that even if something looks great, sounds great from someone that you think is going to be a savior of the space, there are always ulterior motives that we are just never going to be aware of. And I suppose that's the bottom line of the market maker theory, isn't it? Is that for years, they understand how to manipulate traders to do something whilst they're doing something in the background. And that stat that's on, brokers like FXCM and Oanda and that, 75% of all investors lose money. Yes, it's because we're not very good at trading. Yes, because we're emotional. But ultimately, it's because we are led down the garden path by powers far greater than we can really understand. And they have years, decades, centuries of understanding how to manipulate people's thoughts and processes when it comes to financials to make us do all the wrong things at all the wrong times. So just bear that one in mind there. Sorry, Bijan has been typing. Dollar and termites, yeah. Can't really trust any politician or nation state. Central Africa made BTC legal tender and then they launched rug pulls. Yeah. Governor of New York also did a meme. Yeah, well, Bhutan dumping their BTC. I've not really been following the Bhutan thing, but people can change their mind on whether or not it worked for them. I don't know when they were buying, but if they bought at 30,000 and now selling it at 70, well, fair play to them. But yeah, I get what you're saying, and it does put people off. I think it certainly put me off altcoins. I obviously, most of I'm very selective with the altcoins now, and I was a Mr. Altcoin kind of guy. So I just got to that point, maybe old age, time, all that kind of stuff. I've been too battered and bruised, and I got no spare legs. Yeah. Anyway, right, we'll move on. But I think that's an interesting story nonetheless. So Bitcoin, here we go. 12-hour time frame, having a look at with some of the liquidity charts here, and it's kind of interesting. Even on the 12-hour candle, 4 hours of it to go. Obviously, we're actually back down to 74,000. We're $400 under where we were from the open today, which go back 2 or 3 hours and we were at 76,000. I thought it was going to be a completely different discussion, but we can actually see 76,000. That yellow box that's on that screen there has been there for the best part of, I'm trying to have a look, start of March, so 6 weeks. And look at where it's turned around. So that is short liquidity. Okay, so that's people who are short, their liquidation zone, sorry, not liquidity. And they're stepping in. They don't want to lose that position. So sellers are stepping in at 76,000 and they have pushed that price back down. Okay, only by $2,000. May well come back down because it's actually come back on a pretty important level at 74,000. But we can also see that the 50 EMA on the 12-hour time frame has actually also kind of pushed that back down. So there's certainly sort of some sort of pressure at the moment. I think, with the market moving up as it did, sort of $2,000 today, we're going to see some sort of pullbacks and a bit of fun and games. There was a PPI read from the US today. I actually don't even know what it was, but I'm sure that had some sort of implication at market opens with the rest of the market. But I wouldn't write off Bitcoin just yet, because actually, despite today's up and down, it's still looking pretty bullish to me. We've got some sort of bottoming pattern. Get the brush out here. We've come up. We've seen these strong moves with pullbacks coming back to EMAs, previous levels of support and resistance as well, moving up, going on to this fib level, that fib level I've talked about, the high heaven, and sort of finding some support on there right now. And actually, we're continuing to make higher highs and higher lows. Okay, only over the last 4 weeks, but still, that is the case. So we're still seeing a little bit of strength here. And I wouldn't be surprised when we go on to the other charts, you're going to see the vector candles here, big green vector candles. So we expect some sort of pullback in it, but as long as it can maintain, I'd say, over 72,000, the structure's still intact and the move up can still continue to happen. So I'm kind of glad of a little bit of a pullback at the moment. Not glad what it's doing with some of the altcoins, and BitTensor in particular is taking a bit of a kick in. But from Bitcoin's point of view, I don't think it's necessarily too bad. We've come up. We have technically made, as I said at the beginning, that new high. We'll try and zoom in a little bit better on this one to see exactly where it is. But you can see the wick's kind of gone into this already, whereas before it rested up the top there. So that's where the difference is, about $100, give or take. But that progress has been made. I would say, despite the structure looking good at the moment, we should just be cautious. Cautiously short-term optimistic. Definitely not long-term. We're still in that bear flag. The trend is still down. Sentiment is still there. The timescales for everything else is still there. But we get into the top of this range. And that's, it's a nice feeling to be in. But we've been at the top of this range 4 other times. And every time it's come back down to the bottom of the range. So now we're getting close to the top of the range again. There's actually only a little bit left of that move to make. So if you are thinking about longing, just be cautious. Okay, quick moves. That's where you need to be looking there. In terms of the fear and greed, I'm on the wrong side of that, but we're actually at 21. Still extreme fear. It is up from where we have been, and on the 3-month time frame, I mean, 21 find us here. I think today. Actually, no, we're back in the red. Had we have actually managed to stay green, we probably would have climbed to around about 24, 25. But we're at a higher level than we've been over the past 3 months, which makes sense given what price action is kind of doing. But again, there's no real excitement in any of these moves right now. And I think it's because a lot of people are expecting that we are going to see some of that move back down. We go back onto the ETFs. BlackRock is still in the black. They're still buying. It is dropping off over the last few days, and we're seeing some big sells from others. So with net red yesterday, we'll obviously find out how we play today a little bit later on. I actually think we'll probably still be black, just because we saw that initial move up. But we'll wait and see there. So when I say black on BlackRock, and now over the sort of the 3 weeks that we've been here, it's very much a smattering of red days and black days. So whereas a couple of weeks ago through March, we were pretty much 13 out of the 15 days red, we're starting to see a bit more balance from that. So the the fluctuation, should I use a better term, is definitely back within the marketplace. I don't know why I've got this article open, not sure what it is. Bitcoin bears are I50K. We'll have a look at levels a little bit later on. I kind of take these with a pinch of salt because there are other ones that are saying levels at 85K. So, everyone has their opinion. And okay, I'm not sure why I've got that one up there. Not sure what that one is. Just get rid of these. Don't know what that is. There's probably stuff I was looking at whilst I was trying to find that Twitter thing on Polymarkets. What's this one? Crypto on track to be the largest liquidation yet. Oh, this was I didn't realize this. So in the UK, obviously we had our end of financial year. I think it was the 4th or 5th of April. So last week. Apparently in the US, it's tomorrow. So whether or not there's $2.8 billion worth of forced selling in crypto, we'll find out, I suppose. I imagine most people would have already sold to pay, but maybe everyone leaves it to the last day in America. I don't know. But I was more just, okay, it's interesting that tomorrow is the IRS deadline day. That's I suppose interesting. We'll see what happens. And then BitTensor. We haven't really looked at BitTensor on this chart before. But this is the 12-hour. This is this chart, just actually BitTensor instead. And we have a fib on it, and we've got the EMAs as well, but it's a 12-hour time frame, as you can see. And this fib, what's this fib looking at? So we've gone from the previous top, which was 528, down to the 143. Just having a look at where it is in terms of retracements. Now, we didn't quite get to the 78, I accept that, but I'm actually interested right now in sort of these levels that we've had in and around here, because we came back through, we lost the 618, came back, found it, lost the 0.5, came back, found it, rejected from it. We're now sitting bang on the 382. So of the 3 golden levels, have I drawn this one the wrong way? I think I have. Just bear with me a second. Oh no, I did draw it the right way. Okay, fair enough. Apologies. We're bang on that level, 240 to what, 238.82 it is. And so one of the things I was talking about at the beginning, that 240 level being really critical. This is one of the final things we got, the golden ratios from a fib point of view, those 3 there, we're on the last bastion of hope. We lose that. And along with a lot of other things, the next fib level we're really looking at is that $200 level, which kind of ties in with a lot of the other things that we're talking about. The other thing I don't really like about this, and we started to talk about it on Friday, but I said I wanted to see something a little bit more. But now I've looked at it on the 12-hour time frame. I can't remember who mentioned it, but I wonder if there is some sort of logic within, you know, some sort of head and shoulder. It's not the best, I'll be honest. And maybe I still need to give it a bit more time, that actually this is part of this, the down, and we've got still that right hand side shoulder to form, and the neckline is actually here, maybe. But I can't unsee the M formation, the right hand side slightly lower than the left hand side, the strong sharp drop away, support off on the 50 EMA on the 12-hour time frame. We finally lose that, and we're now down just below the EMA. For those of you that I know I bought some bit tensor. I've already gone and sold it. I wasn't interested in what we saw. Took a little bit of a haircut. Sold at $2.62, so $5 per bit tensor. Two reasons behind that. One, I didn't like what we see. Two, my Cooper trading strategy, which is mirrored on the Gordon, I found a flaw within it. I need to do some more testing, so I wasn't ready to deploy. And because I don't want to hold the bit tensor, I ended up selling it. But I am seeing this here now. There's a good chance it could bounce from this level, and if it does, absolutely fine. You know, it's reached sort of golden level, and we'll have a look at some other time frames with a little bit more on there. Right now, there's a tiny smidge support and resistance here, potentially here, which maybe it can, you know, use as some support. But the key thing being that there is nothing after this. There really isn't, from a price point of view, that's holding this up to 200. And so that's kind of where I see it from bit tensor. We'll have a look as we go along. I've got this on here. There's nothing there. Right. Okay. Well, let's get into some actual. Well, we're on the hourly here. Some price investigation stuff on the charts that we usually look at, and then we'll go from there. This is looking pretty messy from Friday, or however we've left that one. So let's just try and see. We'll just get rid of some stuff here just to clear this out a little bit. Kind of talked about that lower level before. We'll leave that top one in right now. We've got the RSI on the bottom. We've got the standard EMAs. We've got the vector candles there. And can you see what I was talking about? You know, that pullback to potentially 72, maybe even down as low as 71 with a 50 EMA. You know, you could understand it because we've had a strong move. There is vectors in there. But getting back down to the 50 EMA, I know we only recently touched it, so there's no need for us to come back down and retest it. But if we were to do that, we would still be climbing upwards. So, I don't think it'd even be painful for us. But, you know, as surprised as some people may be to see that come back down, as long as we held that 71,000, 72,000 kind of level, I think the trend is still going in the right direction. From the daily time frame point of view, this trend line that we had drawn before, which I've tried to draw from bodies. The bodies here, I know there's a wick there. Unfortunately, the wick on this one from the 4th of March and today's actually tie in with this, so it is a bit of a mix of bodies and wicks, but there is some sort of upper channel that maybe we've just started to find that we're running out of a little bit of steam, and unfortunately that sort of bear flag, if you will, it's still playing out, and it's still looking incredibly similar. Time frame's a little bit longer, we'll measure it in a second, to what we saw here in terms of, you know, even the pitch or the angle that it's operating at, very similar. But again, what's even more similar, you know, these attempts to get through, breaking through the 50 EMA, but not getting through the cloud. The last time we actually get through the 50 EMA and the cloud, but then we see it fall away. And that's exactly what's just happened here. We got through the 50 EMA, we couldn't get through the cloud. We've come back down. We finally got through the cloud and the 50 EMA. And if this candle ends like it's going to at the moment, not the best looking candle for us, could this then be the start of a move back down to the lower parts of that trend line, which we'll just draw roughly for now here? Or is it actually going to be the start of a move below that as well, and then to levels like 50k or whatever people are talking about? Certainly there. But talked about 72k being an important level on the way up. It's now that important level on the way down. Obviously, we stay above that, things are good. Well, they're not good, but they're not bad. And that's the level I'd be monitoring at the moment. From the upside, it's getting a little bit bigger, isn't it? I sort of said 78, 79. Well, we got these two EMAs as well, the 800 and the 200 EMA, 80k and about 81,000. I don't want to give you a block of 78 to 81,000. It feels a bit big, but let's just call a nice round number of 80,000. You know, a move up towards that could certainly be on the cards there. Let's get rid of this. RSI kind of looking, I mean, it's only at 60. It's not the worst position. So there's obviously, as I say, still room for it to move back up. I think since it's been in this range, we haven't got any higher than 63 where we're currently at. So maybe that is a sign of it running out of exhaustion. There's a very, 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 very small bearish divergence technically, because we know that from a price point of view, today's price action is ever so slightly higher than what we got on the 17th of March. And we can actually see that where we are today with price action is slightly lower. It was 62.69 and today we're at 61.03. So, I mean, semantics there, but there is technically one within it. What am I doing big picture? Still sat, let's look at that 20% still in BTC. The rest is just sat on the sidelines. Obviously took a little bit of a hit with BitTensor, holding it for 48 hours. Obviously not a great 48 hours to decide to do it. 4-hour time frame. So, okay, so here we go. Bit of a interesting picture kind of developing. Still the same kind of structure from a price candle close and opening point of view. We're still trending upwards. We're still using the 50 EMA as a fairly good support level at the moment. Moves up generally are sort of recovered back to the 50 EMA, and then we continue that move back up. Not all, but a lot of vector candles have been recovered because we're kind of starting to develop a range within that range. So again, vector candles, I mean, solid now, pretty much 74 through to 69. 69 would obviously be that break of that trend with that 72 at the 50 EMA. Still a decent amount of vector candles for us to range back within. But what I'm interested in now is the RSI. Now, again, the RSI is actually showing, sorry, I probably pulled that a little bit too much. Come on, Harry, find, where are you? I've lost it. I've lost, where's the, there it is. Okay. So there is a, start from this price here. We can clearly see that price action has been climbing. No doubt within that is that. Let's get rid of all these others so we can see a bit better. But we can actually see from the same point of view, the RSI has been losing. It's been dropping ever since. And we've started to see that pullback down there. There's no guarantee that a move all the way down to the bottom is going to be anything else. Matter of fact, recently we saw the RSI try to reset and just came perfectly down to the 50 EMA. So this could just be another indication that we're going to have that move back down. The only thing is that the RSI is making lower lows. So maybe it does go a little bit low. It's kind of what we'd want, to be honest. We want to flush this down, but while still trying to keep price above the 50 EMA, kind of get that reset genuinely in there. But it's definitely something worth to have a look at. Let's now try and reset this so we can look at everything a little bit more normally afterwards. And again, the 800 EMA tying in 79,000, that's the upper kind of limit. And I could quite considerably see that. 72k being the barrier, but a retest of sort of wherever that level is going to be and come back through. 1 hour I don't think tells much of a different story. RSI is on its way back down. Started obviously a little bit earlier in terms of candles, and it is a bit further into that drop. But it's a similar kind of story. Obviously 1 hour and 4 hour, 50 and 200 EMA. The 200 EMA sitting down at around about 71.5 at the moment. That would be the kind of level we're looking at, tying in with that 72,000 from the 50 EMA on the 4 hour time frame. Let's have a look at BitTensor then. I'm going to get rid of some of this stuff. Never tidy up. Am I on Pippin? No, it's just highlighted. Okay. So BitTensor, kind of not the best of stories right now, but we're getting close to a point where we're heading down towards that oversold. So maybe we've got some sort of sign there, but you can kind of, it just reinforces the pitch that we've already talked about. So obviously the white line I've got at the moment is just that 240 level we'd already identified. But there is one other level we could perhaps consider, and that would be this level here, around about 214, which tying in to just sort of close this vector candle up on the way back. Now, again, not many vectors left behind. So the ones that we're forming at the top side, there's a pretty good chance at some stage in the next few weeks, month, we're going to come back and we're going to try and have a go at taking some of those. So don't necessarily worry too much that we're on that journey on the way back down, but it does feel like we've finished this rally. Okay, we've come back down, and as I say, we are running out of support. We talked about 300, we lost it. We talked about 260, we've lost it. We can make an excuse if we want to now for 214. That's getting pretty close to that 200 level. The worry really is going all the way back down to that 140, and we have to now start talking about that. We have to start addressing it. It was beautiful when we were talking about 380 on the way back up, but now we're coming back down with the speed of which we came back up. We've got to start talking about some of these levels down here. And that loss of this level here, that's going to probably, for my mind, take us down to the low 100s, if not lower. And that joke I posted about 2 months ago of buy orders at 80 or 90, I think it was, to 120, it's really starting to feel like that could be the case. Now, there's plenty of things in the way between now and then. And if Bitcoin's going to come down, if Bitcoin does anything like it's done recently, this thing's going to climb up. So there's always that to have a look at. And I know that we spoke on Friday about... can't remember the subnet, and I can't remember the subnet owner, but God, what was it called? Covenant or something like that. Some subnet effectively tried to rug, or did rug, their subnet alpha token holders, and it just so happened to happen on the same day as this big red candle. But as I mentioned on Friday, the break and the loss of the 300 level had already occurred, and so that news just amplified it. And took that back down, and there seems to be some sort of swift response from Constant and a few others, and whether or not, whatever side you want to sit on in terms of whether or not you support it, the point being that it hasn't really stopped the drop at the moment, and the momentum unfortunately is to the downside. Certainly on the daily, it looks that way, and even if you just looked at it from a double top point of view and you said that was the neckline, the potential fallout, top neckline down, that's going to take you to 180. So that's the loss of that 200 level. And then, as a matter of fact, it's eating in all of the vectors that are remaining on the daily candle. So I think you have to, appreciate, you can't be married to it. We can't get upset when it happens. It just happens. And we just got to react with it. Bijan's put as an issue is that they were subnet 3, thank you. A lot of crypto websites reporting it simultaneously. Well, okay. I mean, so I suppose a lot of eyes are on it. But if, taking outside everything else, if this was any other asset, there's a good chance that we'd say in the market that we're experiencing, this rally up was people in the know selling into the rally for further falling. And in a bear market, that's what we want to be doing, isn't it? Any rallies we want to sell in, just like in a bull market, any dips we want to be buying. Well, this is what people are doing. And then when that exhaustion dies out, typically we see further falling. That's just unfortunately how it goes. And that very much does look like that was the case there. The big picture above everything else, though, is it's a rally. We put it on the weekly. It's just a continuation, isn't it? Lower high. That's a confirmed lower high now. So next time we rally, we're no longer talking about trying to break the 500. It's now trying to break the 300. That's the reality of it. Zoom out and it's just lower highs, exactly. Now zooming back in, 4-hour time frame. Get rid of some of these. I mean, the one thing I would say is we're pretty exhausted right now, aren't we? And so even if we move down, I could see over the next 24 hours, some sort of move back up, because we've not only have we been down in the sort of sub 30s, we've kind of lingered down it for a while, not really had that flush, but the 10 EMA on the 4-hour time frame really just dictating the direction of the travel right now. And so, we got to get through that 250 and then 262, with this 800 EMA in a 4-hour time frame, a real big thing. And I think in the absolute dreamland scenario, we get a bit higher, 270, 280, and sort of running into that 50 and 200 EMA. The point being, all the EMAs, including the 800 EMA, are tilting down now. Now, they're not quite aligned in the point of view of, 800 at the top, 250, but we're getting that way. Whether or not you want to call a death cross with the 200 and the 50 crossing here on the 4-hour time frame, I'll leave that to you. I know some people don't buy into them all. That's fair enough. But just this here right now, it doesn't feel like this has bottomed. We had a resting period. So, you think about that market maker, your big drop consolidation. This now feels like we've lost the bottom of that consolidation at 250. And we're just starting that next move down. I'd say it does feel like we are actually, quite aggressively oversold at the moment. So it wouldn't surprise me to see some sort of rally through, maybe back into this consolidation period, but it'd just be that Kobo, just that false move up before that next move back down. And the 1 hour, the RSI is looking just as weak, and you can kind of see just how brutal that fall was down there. We did actually manage to come back up when we got to 280 to pretty much reset it, but we are back down at these lows. So maybe that reset on the 1 hour to the 50 EMA, which, let's face it, is pretty much solidifying the Como once I get this Kobo, because all that's doing is coming up to here, which is the base of this consolidation period. So we've lost it, Kobo off, continuation. I think that could be a very apt description of how that's potentially playing out. Some of the other ones, just we'll flick through, and then we'll maybe have a look at some of the traditional markets. Ethereum, this one at least actually is performing like Bitcoin, whereas Total 2 generally isn't. Ethereum put in a new high today, starting to see that retrace, but the pattern is still there for those moves back up. And the equivalent of that 79,000 we're talking about is probably about 2,600. So I can't really badmouth Ethereum without badmouthing Bitcoin. The structure is still currently there. I think the white line's a fairly decent representation of the area I'd be looking at. Maybe to just round it down to 2,200 and work from it from that point of view. Solana. So today it's moved smack bang rejected off the 50 EMA. So that sort of weakness from Total 2. And maybe it's a case of actually a lot of these, Doge, some big players, top 15 tokens outside of Ethereum, not really looking the same, starting to paint that picture of why Total 2 may not be looking as good. BNB, similar case, not even made it to the 50 EMA. Link, I'm not sure what position it is. Okay, got slightly past 50 EMA, but we've lost it again already. Any of these other ones, XRP, of course, up to the 50 EMA today. So there we go, Total 2, the vast majority of ones outside of stablecoins, not even making it past the 50 EMA, which, as I said, Bitcoin already done that, and Ethereum done the same as well. So that's where we're seeing that disconnect for me. In terms of some of the other things to have a look at, the VIX settling pretty nicely. I've got to get rid of these circles. As a matter of fact, I'm going to do it now. Save. Hit save. There we go. Dixie. So we are pulling back down to that key level at 98. See what we do there. Be interesting to see how the dollar reacts if we get... I haven't really... So I've kind of avoided the political side of things. So we got the ceasefire, the 2-week ceasefire. There's been sporadic reports of sort of missile fire and everything else. But we haven't really seen an official, right, actually we're seeing some pretty heavy bombardments again. But we've got this interesting dynamic where Trump has decided to block the Strait of Hormuz, although I believe that a Chinese oil tanker called his bluff today. So it would just be interesting to just see sort of what actually happens. The ceasefire is, a week old now, and we've got another week left of it. And how that rallies. And speaking of this, the interesting thing for me, and I mentioned this in Discord today, is off the news of the ceasefire, we have seen this very strong market reaction. NASDAQ climbing, oil falling, S&P climbing, near all-time highs again. Certainly to levels seen at the start of the conflict. But as I sort of mentioned, it does feel a bit knee-jerk reaction to me because, yes, okay, we have a temporary and hopefully permanent pause to the hostilities in the region, but the long-term ramifications have not played out yet. We still have an energy, I don't know if you could call it a crisis, because in America, obviously, feel they can produce their own, but we're certainly feeling the impact of the energy crisis there. We've got the geopolitical fallout. It feels like everyone's falling out with the US at the moment over this. The NATO impact as well. From the UK point of view, we've just actually proven just how useless a military we actually have. And so our sort of bargaining chips on the world stage have absolutely been eviscerated by the fact we're an island nation that has no navy. We're having to get the French to track Russian subs through our waters and Russian tankers through our waters. But we'll leave that there. Yeah, so I just think this has been a very strong reaction from that. And I put these couple of lines on here. So we've broken through this level here, which was interesting because on the weekly, which is what I was druid on, we still obviously want to see the weekly close, but this was what I just wanted to break through that and have we got the resolution, because look, on the weekly time frame, the weekly close high is actually only $60, or sorry, say 60 points away from where price currently is. Now we have to wait for another few more days for this to close before we can call it. But if we want to go from down onto the daily, then it's this horizontal line at 400 points away from where we currently are right now. So I feel like the strength of the move that's happened there is quite surprising, just given we've got a lot of uncertainty around. Now I'm happy with that because I haven't really done anything with my pension pot. The only thing I did sell was Palantir, and thankfully with the ceasefire that's actually dropped back down. I don't feel so stupid anymore. It's starting to recover a little bit, but I can live with it. Everything else is making a decent recovery. Now, whether or not this is a death rattle for a blow off top, and we've got this one move coming up, I think that's something that we need to consider. But even right now on the RSI for the Nasdaq, it's still looking fairly high, so we certainly need to consider that. But the movement, there are vector candles on here, but they're not really playing out. It's fairly stable, in terms of volume, movements up, but a strong move nonetheless. We've gone from 22,700 to 25,800, 3,000 points in the space of 10 days. It's pretty impressive, to be honest. Something to watch out for there anyway. Gold starting to make that move back up, bit more confidence back where we are, back above the 50 EMA on the daily time frame. Maybe even an opportunity to push towards that 5,000 closeout vector candle. Start to look at that move back up there. Silver, similar. It's actually made a little bit of a stronger move today. But we've got a few more levels to get through. And I think just silver had such a run. It's taken there. But there seems to be a decent amount of confidence of both of them pushing off the 200 EMAs. These could have turned out to be some really good buying positions for those that had the courage. And it would have been difficult. We lost 50% of silver's value in the space of a matter of weeks. So knowing that was a point to buy in might have been quite tough, but it's certainly an opportunity there. Asted, I'm not going to bother going through my pension pot. As I say, it's kind of still there at the moment. We need to decide what we're doing with it. I say we, the royal we, me. But Astra, which I don't own, but just for those who are, it's still sort of moving down. Maybe Simon can give a bit of an update from where that is in terms of sort of legacy holders of the token. But for me, just from a TA point of view, just trending down, from what I understand, the finances weren't great. And so it looks like legacy holders are just abandoning it, new team in, everything else. Those that just don't want to be involved are finding those opportunities to sell. My concern would be just from a TA point of view. This is the lowest it's been, I think, since, I don't know when Sam and the team took over, but it didn't feel like it was that long ago. But that move maybe down to sort of sub 10 cents probably on the cards, sort of like maybe trying to find some sort of bounce in that zone there would be. Let me just hit save again, see how well that plays out. And so so I think that's probably where we are with all of that. It's been about an hour. What to say, really? Bitcoin's made a good move. Of course it has. We're happy for it to do that. My big wide picture has not changed though. I still think there's at least one more leg back down. We're still in that bearish pattern, so I am still cautious and I haven't bought back in. And yeah, but you know, why don't I try and play these ranges? Because we have gone this recent move from 65,000 to 75,000. It's a $10,000 move. What, a 13% move? There's certainly something worth in maybe doing that, but I suppose risk to rewards and everything else. I'm kind of always thinking when we're at the lows, it could be the start of that next move. And then by the time we're going, is it really worth it? No, not necessarily for what I'm trying to do. And we just got to stick with it. The interest in the market is not there right now. And, you know, speaking with someone that's been in this particular position, obviously, so 18, 22, so this will be the third time, I suppose. I can assure you these dull times are the best times to actually be here. We'll find when that bottom is. We won't get the exact bottom, but we will find when that bottom is. We'll buy, and we'll be the lucky ones in inverted commas for the next cycle. So yes, stick with it. You know, just play the risk, play it right, play sensible, and try and manage that risk. And then, you know, we will all find, well, hopefully, obviously, in a few years' time, that we'll look back on some point in 2026 as we were there. We stuck through these downturns. Oh, that was one thing we were going to do. The chart's still on the screen. So I was going to see how long these have been running. So this drop here, when do you want to call the range from there, isn't it? There to there. So it was 79 days. And we're going to take it from here. Well, it's 75 days if you just took it from there. But if we took it from when we actually got to the bottom, we're around, oh, no, we're not. That's got to come in. We're around about 69 days. So I know we're kind of similar kind of time frames from where we were here with that move at 9 to 98 right at the end, bringing in that false hope before that move back down. You know, the fact that we've made a new high within this, maybe eke a little bit more out to really encourage people to think that we're the right side of it. The timing's kind of playing with us right now. I would just be a little bit cautious with where we are and stay nimble. Don't go on holiday to places on the coast with no signal. That I would absolutely assure you from. Right, that's it from me. I'm going to leave it there. I didn't get around to speaking to Lewis, but I'm going to message him now. If people are actually interested in having a little bit of a Google chat tomorrow where everyone can speak rather than it just be me, and we can talk about anything. We can talk about subnets, we can talk about crypto, we can talk about bots, whatever. Let me know and I'll try and sort of arrange that. It'll probably be around about lunchtime tomorrow, but I'll be up for that and we'll try and get that on a regular thing. Trading Pub on Tuesday. I'll be here on Friday to do some more charting ahead of the weekend. And yeah, enjoy the rest of the week, everybody, if you can. Any questions, as always, feel free to ask. And other than that, I'll speak to you all soon. Have a good one. Cheers now.